Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Archie Unpopular Opinion. Today, I want to discuss language, more particularly how language affected human evolution. So, unpopular opinion, language had a negative effect on humanity and human evolution. And the reason I say that is because years ago, I was watching a show on Fox called Touch. And I don't know if a lot of you remember that show, but it was about an autistic kid who couldn't talk, but he was very intelligent and he pieced together things very, very fast and very well. So it's on the intro to the show, he used to always like his voice, it would be his voice that would always like say something very introspective, very bright. One time he said, speech was a speed bump on the path of evolution or something like that. And it always stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it since I heard it. Like, why did humans develop speech? So I started researching it, and I see this one question all the time. Even while I was researching for this episode, a lot of like the leading scientists keep asking, why didn't other species on the planet develop verbal communication? And I started thinking of it a different way. Like, why did we have to develop, verbal communication? Why was it necessary? Because evolution, you evolve to survive, right? So why was it so important for us to evolve with verbal communication as a species? And it's a question that I don't think we'll be able to answer because it was, prehistoric times. There's no written record, but it's fun to speculate about it, right? So language like just came out of nowhere 100,000 years ago. There's a lot of debate as to how it happened, if it, evolved over time or if it happened instantly. Like Noam Chomsky has a very good theory that it was a mutation in the brain that just led to us to be able to communicate verbally. I think though, and this is why I say that it had a negative impact on evolution. We know that usually when someone loses a sense, right, like sight or hearing, the other senses become stronger. And even like different sides of the brain, usually left brain people are stronger, analytically and with math and things like that. And right brain people are stronger with written expression and things like that. So usually one side of the brain is always stronger. So I started thinking like, what would have happened if we didn't develop speech? Would our brains have evolved more? Will we be able to use more percentage of our brains? I'm not saying that we should have never developed verbal communication, but what I'm saying is maybe if it came maybe 40,000 years later or 50,000 years later, our brains would have developed even more, and we would be more sophisticated than we are today. So that's why I say that I think verbal communication, when it came, not that it came at all, but when it came, had a negative impact on evolution. We see like autistic kids that can't speak, their brains form different. They're better at, chess and puzzles and things like that, but they can't speak, but they're so much more advanced than other areas of their brains. So that got me to thinking like, if we never developed verbal communication, or if we developed it later, how would our brains have evolved as a species, right? Like, I'm often complimented on my way to articulate my thoughts and code switch and speak to people that they understand. And a lot of people that are less articulate in today's society, people view that as somehow being less intelligent because they're less articulate. And I don't agree with that. I remember when I started foreign exchange trading, I had a friend of mine who is not as articulate as I am. He started with me a little bit after me. And we would go to these like calls, and he really wouldn't be able to articulate well, and he wouldn't be able to ask the questions that he really wanted to ask. And a lot of the people that were teaching us kind of like not brushed them off, but they wouldn't really answer his questions. I think that the way that he was wording his questions was whatever. Maybe there was some miscommunication there. So they kind of like just brushed over his questions, and long story short, about a year goes by, and I stop a little for a time. He keeps going with it, and he's better at it than I am. And that's just one of the reasons why I think that's just one reason why I think that being articulate doesn't necessarily always equate to intelligence. Doing research, right, for this episode, I looked at a lot of different things about language and why we developed it. And that's like my biggest question. Is like 85% of communication is nonverbal. We know that, we hear that all the time. But if you flip that, right, only 15% of communication is verbal. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, yes, it's necessary. I could see you can make an argument for like the amazing things that we did with verbal communication as far as like strategizing, hoarding. I'm sure it played a major role in hunting and building civilization as we know it. Yes, verbal communication is very necessary. Also, it's here to stay. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in no way saying everybody should just shut the hell up. That's not what I'm saying. But though, a lot of people, like quieter people, do tend to be a lot more smarter. So it just gets me to thinking, like, what if we didn't? What would the world look like had we developed verbal communication a little bit later in life? It's just something fun to think about. This has been fun for me. Um, and then too, like I always think like thought, right? Like there's so many different languages. If you take like, so in English we call blue blue, in Spanish they call blue azul, right? So what actually is the essence of the object that we're describing? You know what I mean? Like thought is just such a powerful thing, and I feel like it gets diluted a lot of the times with verbal communication. A lot of confusion and miscommunication happens. You know what I'm saying? There's varying levels of comprehension when it comes to communication. And I just feel like, when I'm talking to someone, I may use different words, different vocabulary, but the level of sophistication and the thought stays the same. So I don't really look at people that's less articulate as being somehow less intelligent. I've never taken that, thought. But it's just fun to think like where will we be had we not developed verbal communication, or if we developed it later in life. This sounds fun to think about. This has been real. It's been fun for me to do the research on it and share some of my thoughts with you guys. I'm looking forward to maybe seeing some comments, and tell me what you think. Also, tell me I got two other unpopular opinions that I'm thinking about doing. One is nature versus nurture. I got an unpopular opinion on that. Also, Niccolo Machiavelli, and I feel like how his name gets dragged nowadays and is synonymous with manipulation, and I just don't agree with that. I think he was just a great man. So tell me, guys, tell me what you guys would want to see next. Nature versus nurture, or Niccolo Machiavelli on unpopular opinion. And as always, I want you guys to love each other. I want you guys to take care of each other. Love yourselves. I will do the same and just try to pour that love out to as many people as we can. Choose your words wisely. Words hurt. Be thoughtful about what you say, because definitely words are powerful, and thought is even more powerful. I want to dedicate this episode to my twin nephews, Malik and Malachi. Always a delight to be around, and also Mr. Carter Jace, a good friend of mine, and his amazing mom, who does a lot of work behind the scenes, helping me create this content and deliver it to you guys. I want you all to have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Archie Tech's Unpopular Opinion.